There's always so much confusion over how we can make granular synthesis work for us. So, it sounds cool, it sounds really experimental, but how do we get a little bit less experimental with the granular synths? How do we make it shine maybe as like a polyphonic type synth sound, right? And I have a really interesting way to approach it in this video. It might become one of your favorite new techniques, and it really does work with basically any granular synth because we're not going to use any special parameters. We'll use Granulator 3 from Ableton, but the parameters that we're using are on pretty much any granular synth interface. And because we're not using any special parameters, you can do this anywhere, and it's really simple to do. Okay, so what's really important is to start with a sample that you can get a result from. So here I have a little basic piano sample, and it just sounds like some gentle playing through C minor or C pentatonic minor. I actually played this in myself and just bounced it to audio. So if you know the key signature of what something is, that's a huge benefit, but you could also just create your own samples. So you have something that you know the key. Okay, I know my key is C minor. What I'm going to do here is go to all. I'm going to get my granular synth, Granulator 3, drag and drop it in. I'll leave a link in the description down below if you need to download the synthesizer for your Ableton setup. But the main thing is that the controls are going to be very simple. So I'm going to drag this over, drop it in. And the basic thing with a granular synth is most of them have a position parameter, which is going to move this little region around. That's one of the key things. So if I just play a C note on my keyboard, and then I move position around, it's triggering the sound and it's creating this sort of fast looping granular effect. I'm just triggering little grains of the sound, right? So that's kind of granular synthesis in a bit of a nutshell there. Now, how do we do something cool with this? Let's just first tweak these parameters a little bit so we can change the sound a little bit. So I'm going to turn scan up. What this is going to do is it's going to change things so they move along the sample. It's still got this stuttering looping effect, but you can see it's advancing now, which is a really interesting thing. I'm also going to mess with the grain size. I'm going to make it a little smaller. You could always completely go your own way with your own sample, by the way. I'm just going to show you what these things do. So grain size, smaller grain. It's going to smudge and sound more like it's freezing over itself when you go into smaller and smaller, closer and closer to 100 milliseconds, right? And even below that, it starts to kind of almost get feedbacky. It's sort of smudging in time when you do that. I like that effect. I'll go with that. The shape is the shape or the length of the crossfade. So I'm going to adjust this as well. That can have a bit of an effect on the way it sounds, the tone of the sound that we're creating. Now, this is the big one, variation. I like to turn this up because it adds that variation to the sound, which is way less predictable to our ear. Even though this is already a kind of cool sound, this is going to flutter now. So you turn up variation, and a lot of settings that we're at, you're just getting this sort of thing where it's basically modulating the position when you think about it. It's just moving unpredictably now. And with a piano, which has a very transient sound, it gets very fluttery, which is something I think is really cool. And you're going to see in a second why it can really work very well. So I'm just holding down the key and I get a really cool sound. Very unpredictable and glitchy. And the last thing I'm going to mess with is spread. This is kind of unique to Granulator, but I just think it's really cool. It kind of creates more of a stereoization effect to the sound. I'm going to keep it not too crazy because I'm not trying to go for like an octave effect. So I'll just bring that up a little bit. And now we can move into shaping the sound so that it can be more like a synth. So you'll notice that when you click on this area right here, it's showing the envelope. The envelope is a big part of, in general with synthesizers, how you make different types of sounds. So if I want to turn the sustain down and I go for, let's say, a longer decay, maybe something that's like 3 seconds, add on about 3+ seconds of release, when I play the keyboard and I just tap that note, it's now kind of responding like a piano keyboard, right? Now it sounds really cool already. The one thing about it though is that you'll notice that when I play in the key of C minor on my keyboard, it's sort of not being very diatonic because I am triggering sample. So if I know that the sample is an E flat, but I also know that when I play, it's modulating it too much out of my key signature, how do I fix that? This is where things get really interesting because we already have Granulator working like this cool timbral element in our sound. I can go over to my MIDI effects and I can control that. So if I go to scale and I drag and drop this before Granulator, this grid might look really confusing. It's really simple, you guys. Look at this bottom row. This bottom row means that these are all the notes that I could conceivably play, the 12 notes of the Western scale. If I click on all of them, what it's going to do is make sure they're all C. So now when I play C, I'm never in danger of it modulating the sample. Now it still sounds kind of static though when I do that. We can go back to position. So with position now being handled, maybe I'm going to use an LFO to change things around. I'm just going to use a separate LFO. So I go to modulators, LFO, drag and drop that after the instrument. Now what I'm going to do is I want this thing to move position around. So I'm going to pick something. I'm going to go with random and I'm going to hit this little musical button here and change this to quarter notes, which is pretty cool. So now it's going to be moving around in quarter notes, going around randomly. I'm going to hit remote, map, and I'm going to hit position. So now position is moving around the sample. I like remote because I can establish, I've got some dead space in the sample. So I'm going to pull this back a little bit, make sure it's always triggering some kind of audio because I have that dead space in the sample. You might not need to do that if the sample's totally full when it's in this window here, right? So now it's just triggering different parts of the sample. I'm not even playing, but it's synced to tempo, right? So now when I play my keys, let's get our keyboard up here. Way more variety. Now the notes that I'm playing though are still just all being conformed to C. So what's the point of this? Why would I be playing a keyboard with this? Well, anything that you're doing in Ableton, I might sound like a broken record to my YouTube subscribers, but hit that like button and subscribe, by the way, if you're new here. Anything in Ableton can be in a chain. So what does that mean? If I go and I shift click, hit Control G or Command G on Mac, now this is in its own lane, right? Now it's in its own lane. And because of that, I can have something else that is playing independently. So I'm going to hit Control G again. Why would I have a chain within a chain? Well, maybe I want to add wavetable to this instrument, but have its MIDI notes be what I'm actually playing. So now I've got a simple little sine wave, right? Maybe I'll make sure this is like the same kind of envelope as the one I did before. So I had a fast attack, 3 seconds on the decay, no sustain, 3+ seconds on the release. Let's do that over here. No sustain, 3-ish seconds on the decay and the sustain or the release. And there we go. So now I've got this nice little sine wave synth. And that sounds cool. Maybe let's add a little classic shimmer or unison to it. Nice and warbly and nice. Turn it down a little bit. So now when I play, I have this thing triggering the way I want it to trigger. And I have this thing playing the notes that I'm playing, right? So now we've created this nice multi-timbral, see our granulator there, multi-timbral synth sound. Wow, right? Sine waves are beautiful for layering. They might sound very vanilla and maybe a little too soft on their own, but they give you that nice principled tone. So when you have something that's very textured, it gives you a beautiful sound. It's very soft, but you can add saturation, distortion, or layer on other oscillators with it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this useful. I love using granulated synthesizers to get this kind of timbral effect. So hopefully you found this useful. If you're a Patreon member, you can find a preset from this video linked down below. There's a bunch of other goodies down there as well if you feel like downloading something and getting started with this right away. But it's really approachable and easy to do. The Patreon is linked in the description. It's a huge exclusive library of a lot of videos, ad-free watching, great community, really talented people on there. MIDI, presets, loop libraries, full courses, vocal production, vocal chains, so much stuff. I want to give a big shout out to my Patreon members. These are the people who monetarily support this YouTube channel and the content and downloads that I do. Without these people, none of this would be possible. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have fun making music.